Welcome back, everybody, and here's another episode of Building Better Bodies with Deven and the Docs, and we also have Brandy, who by now you know very well, our star and our other star, Deven Brady, the bodybuilder and bodybuilding coach, Dr. Roberto De Sena, and I am Dr. Amir Rashidian. And today we were gonna start recording, but then we remembered that Brandy, during her workout, asked a very cool, very important question. You're probably thinking the same question. If you haven't thought of it, it's a good question to be thinking about. So what was that question you asked?
Well, first off, be careful of when you ask these questions, because I was asking it during my warm-up.
Yes.
After a really, really heavy day the day before. And Deven kind of looked at me like a little puzzled as to why I was asking this, but my question was, and I had asked you that morning, was when is it necessary to have a rest? Like, we're doing these 6-day split, right? So we're in the gym every day, except for Sundays, and we're not doing like light workouts.
No.
I mean, there are some that feel lighter than others. Our leg days are, they're crazy. So the day after feels light, but really, comparatively to what a lot of people are doing, they're not light workouts. None of them are.
Correct.
So how long can we keep that up before our bodies just go, okay, I need a little bit more than 24 hours?
Right, and that's a fantastic question. There's a lot of varying science, a lot of different disciplines, a lot of different theories on the issue. Me personally, I think we have to listen to our bodies. These type of workouts that you guys are doing is going to help you to be more engaged with your body, what's going on, and the kind of signals it's sending to you back and forth. But as far as general exhaustion, fatigue, signs of what we like to call the plateau in the industry, I think it's important. You really have to be aware of what's going on and understand the signals that your body is telling you. There's one that's general motivation, passion. It's going to peak and valley. That's not the same. That's not the same as I need to change up my workout routine. That's not the same as I've reached its maximum potential. When I use the term plateau, I like to say that we've really kind of maxed out, and that's based on a number of different factors, okay? It can be mental fatigue, it can be physical exhaustion, and by that I mean we're not continuing to make the same levels of progress week to week. I mean, you're really starting to come up against a pretty significant barrier as far as progress is concerned. That's where I need to know, I need to feel comfortable that we're reaching the maximum potential of any given plan that you're on. And at that time, you know, there's a lot of different tools that we can use to switch things up. But what we have to keep in mind is boredom is not a plateau, okay? So if there are a lot of people, I would stress that if you think you've reached a plateau, really, really challenge yourself. You know, don't just be like, oh, I'm just tired of doing this. It's not a motivational issue, is not the same as a plateau. Plateau means you've truly given it your all and you're mentally and physically exhausted. And by that, I mean you're not able to stimulate in the same way, train as effectively. You're very, very, sore. You're not moving forward. We're not making progress on a relatable, trackable scale any longer. And that's when we start to look at things like possible rest, possible program changes, program redesigns, ways to keep it fresh, way to kind of give your body a little bit more rest that it clearly needs based on the signals it's sending you, but also maybe make progress in a different way and help you to kind of break through that plateau.
Go ahead.
So what would you recommend for someone at home to distinguish between boredom and true fatigue? What are some self-tips you use?
Yeah, so the tip that I will use in this case and in many others is you have to keep track. So, if you don't keep track, I think you're likely to run into this problem perhaps a little bit sooner than others. Right. And by that, I mean, if you're always kind of flying by the seat of your pants, if you're always pulling workouts, rep ranges, weights, just out of midair, you need to be so much more disciplined in order for that to be an effective training strategy. What I would offer as an alternative to those people is start to track things down, start to write everything down, start to pre-plan, understand what your workout looks like before you get in the gym. Don't necessarily rely on what machine is open or what you're feeling like doing. there's a time and a place for all that. But what we need to be able to do is track your progress over time. Make sure, because that's one way of letting you know if your program is still effective or not. If you're continuing to make progress, then don't be so quick to jump off the boat, even if you're bored, even if it seems to be getting tiresome. We always want to reinvent the wheel. We're always struggling to try to get ahead of ourselves and make as much progress as possible. But sometimes the old adage is true. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Make sure if you found an effective program, something that's really working for you, make sure you hammer it very, very hard and get the most out of it before really moving on to something else.
Jerry Brainham was one of the old-time bodybuilders with Arnold and Franco Colombo and those guys. He's got a podcast, and he mentioned this kind of a thing where shocking the system and changing your routines. And he said, yeah, even Arnold Schwarzenegger talked about switching up and changing your routine. But we think it's like change it up all the time.
Right.
But literally, and he trained with Arnold Schwarzenegger for years, he said Arnold had his routine and he stuck with it. He would go in and do the same thing in the same order every time he stepped in the gym.
Yeah.
He would change it up only when, like you're saying, it wasn't working anymore. Your body also needs time to adapt, right? Adaptation is physical change, strength change, mental change, all that stuff. Sometimes your barriers are up here.
That's right.
Right? And when I've noticed that when you go, you can do a few more. And I do, and it's a surprise because I literally didn't think I could do it. And what's your experience, Ben, when it comes to plateaus?
Well, definitely it's a difficult thing to experience. Always good when you have someone like Deven or someone that's there with you, like Amir and I have been, to tell you, yes, you can, because I've seen it.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, fatigue is controlled by things like muscle ATP, right? Your glycogen levels can get depleted, which is sugar. Neurotransmitters like acetylcholine is one that control. In fact, do you guys remember? Maybe I'm older than all of you, but in the 80s, the Russians would win all the gold medals in gymnastics and so on.
Right.
And then they invented this thing called the Russian stim, which we use in the office, right? Russian stim. Russian stim is electrodes you put on the muscle, you turn it on, and it causes muscle contraction. They call it muscle stim. So why Russian stim is a type of that, different type of frequency. The reason they call it Russian stim is because in the days, the lifters in Russia, they would grab, let's say, a bar and they would curl. When they failed, the electrodes were there right on the biceps. They would turn it on and use outside electricity to crank out one more rep. I mean, they would go beyond failure and then stick another rep into it using electricity. That's why they call that Russian stim. If you watch the movie Rocky IV, I think there's a scene where they've got electrodes on the Russian doing some weights. So neurotransmitter depletion is something that can cause that fatigue, and then if you're not replacing that, another thing that can cause fatigue, I believe, is hormones. Right? When your hormones get depleted. So for example, there's a graph of you start lifting heavy, and within 40 minutes, growth hormone is supposed to go up. And cortisol kind of dips a little bit, and then cortisol starts to come up. Now, cortisol, they say, is a bad hormone and so on, but it does stimulate muscle growth. Now we're fine, and it maintains your immune system, and it's an anti-inflammatory, right? Like cortisone shots. So we want it. We don't want to totally suppress it. So it comes up, and then on the graph, cortisol starts to go higher than growth hormone, and testosterone plays a role in all that stuff. But you can get depleted because it sometimes takes 48 hours for growth hormone and testosterone to return to normal levels to lift again. So that's why some of the really heavy power lifters, how long do they wait?
The really heavy power lifters, in terms of waiting, seconds. So
yeah, absolutely.
Well, now I'm a little nervous that he's going to be coming to our workouts with a TENS unit.
Yes.
Hooking us up.
No, TENS won't do it. It has to be specifically
thank goodness for
Russian stim. Russians own the name, right? We have one in the office, but it's a big, bulky machine with long wires, so I don't think
we'll save that for our
that's
3
right.
month.
Wait till we hit the plateau.
That's right.
You know?
That's right.
So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword in terms of, you want to get the most out of a program, so you want to stick with it.
Right.
that's when boredom may come up.
It may, yes.
Because you're not switching it up. So what are some things to get around that you would use with your clients?
Yeah, so I would say the easiest, that's a great question. I would say the easiest maybe first step, if boredom is truly starting to outweigh your ability to perform the program effectively, if it just feels like drudgery and you don't even want to go in, if that's the options that we're dealing with, if it's you're so bored and you're so the lack of motivation is so high, you're threatening not even going into the gym rather than continuing to go in, the small changes that I would suggest, Dr. Roberto, is start off, switch your workout order. So we don't need to do anything drastic, right? If the program is in fact effective, and we know this to be true by tracking it, then what I would suggest is a quick starting rotation is just kind of like a bingo ball. Just jumble up the exercises. You know the exercises, you know the sets, you know the reps. Instead of working top to bottom, work bottom to top.
Right.
Sometimes it's a small change that just like that, if the body is really attuned with what you're doing, just that kind of small change can really, bring a little bit more effectiveness out of a program. And it might make it it might be just different enough that, it keeps things fresh.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
You could also bring someone like Deven in.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that.
Because it's
you
really
would
hard
not
to
get
get
bored.
Sorry. Everyone at home.
That's
You'll
right.
experience other emotions, but boredom doesn't.
Boredom will
wasn't-
not be one.
Yeah, for sure. Now, listen, I want to tell you, and we're going to talk about this more on the next video, but I would recommend you walk into One Life South, One Life Fitness South, Buckystown Pike, right? You walk in and you say what?
You say, hey, I just saw the videos with Dr. Amir, the doctors, and Deven. All you need to do is mention the videos in any way, and it's a free, no questions asked, 7-day pass. So 7 days to use our club to the fullest of your abilities in that 7 days with no contracts and no commitment. So there's really no reason not to. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to come in, get comfortable with our facility, and get something started.
Yeah,
We won't be bored.
that's right. If you run into us, stop and say hi.
That's right.
We don't mind taking a break from all the pain. Just kidding. Don't interrupt my set. Take care, guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.